The history of our world spans millions of years, a rich tapestry woven from countless events and stories. While some parts of history have been rewritten to suit the narratives of different eras, the core truths of what happened remain unchanged. And often they're far stranger and darker than you'd imagine. Today, we're going to look at 15 of the most horrible historical facts that schools often leave out of their curriculum, but that every person should know. Let's start with number 15. The witch trials in Europe. Between the 15th and 18th centuries, Europe was engulfed in a frenzy of witch hunts, resulting in the deaths of tens of thousands of people, primarily women. Driven by fear, superstition, and religious extremism, the witch trials targeted those who were perceived as different, particularly women who defied societal norms or held independent power. The most infamous trials, such as those in Salem and Germany, often relied on dubious evidence, such as confessions extracted through torture or accusations based on personal vendettas. The burning times, as they were called, saw people condemned to horrific executions, including burning at the stake, drowning, or hanging. These trials represented a disturbing period marked by mass hysteria, unchecked power, and deep-rooted misogyny. It wasn't until the 18th century that the trials began to fade, but the witch hunts served as a haunting reminder of the dangers of irrational fear and societal panic. Number 14. The story of Minnie Dean. Minnie Dean, New Zealand's only woman to ever be executed, is infamous for a dark chapter in the country's history. In the late 19th century, Minnie began running a baby farm, where she took in children, often from unwed mothers, in exchange for payment. While the high infant mortality rate of the time initially kept her activities under suspicion, tragedy struck when the bodies of 3 children were found buried in her garden in 1895. Upon investigation, authorities uncovered that 2 children had been killed, one poisoned, and the other strangled. The deaths led to her arrest, and despite her lawyer's defense that she concealed the deaths out of fear, Minnie was found guilty and hanged. The case shocked the public and remains one of the most chilling in New Zealand's history, illustrating the darker side of childcare during the era and the extreme societal pressures placed on women. Number 13. Books bound in human leather. The practice of binding books in human leather, known as anthropodermic bibliopagy, was a gruesome reality during the 17th to 19th centuries. This dark chapter in history saw the skin of executed criminals, medical cadavers, or people who died under mysterious circumstances used to cover books. The process was disturbingly similar to the tanning of animal hides, where the skin was treated and transformed into leather. Human skin was preferred due to its durability, and some books even contained the names of the deceased inscribed on the skin. Despite the horrifying nature of this practice, some of these books have survived into modern times, preserved as macabre relics of a gruesome past. While the practice faded, the existence of these books serves as a spine-chilling reminder of the darker side of human history. Number 12. The Chinese Massacre of 1887. On October 24, 1887, a horrific race riot broke out in Los Angeles, known as the Chinese Massacre, when an angry mob targeted the Chinese community in the city. The massacre, spurred by a dispute between 2 Chinese factions, saw over 500 people attack Chinatown. 19 Chinese immigrants were brutally murdered by the mob, and countless others were left injured. The violence was fueled by rising anti-Chinese sentiment and the perception that Chinese workers were taking jobs away from white Americans. The brutality of the attack, including lynching and property destruction, left Chinatown in ruins. Shockingly, despite the scale of the massacre, only 10 people were arrested, and none were convicted, as a legal loophole prevented Chinese witnesses from testifying. The event was largely swept under the rug, fading from public memory until later efforts by historians to bring attention to this dark chapter in American racial history. Number 11. Jameson's dark obsession with cannibalism. James Jameson, heir to the Jameson whiskey fortune, is best known for a chilling episode in his life that was hidden from the public for decades. In 1888, James joined an expedition to Central Africa, where he developed an unsettling interest in witnessing cannibalism firsthand. Reports suggest that he bartered for the life of a 10-year-old slave girl, only to witness her being killed and eaten by a cannibalistic tribe. Disturbingly, Jameson did not intervene, but instead sketched the event in vivid detail, capturing the grotesque scene in watercolors. His fascination with the act was so intense that it overshadowed the tragic circumstances surrounding the girl's death. Though his widow later defended him, claiming he was an innocent observer, accounts from others confirmed his disturbing role. This dark chapter in his life tarnished both his legacy and the brand that still bears his family's name today, leaving a sinister mark on history. Number 10. The craft behind stained glass. Church windows. The creation of stained glass windows, iconic in churches worldwide, has a darker history than most realize. While these windows are admired for their vibrant beauty and artistic craftsmanship, the process of making them once involved the use of an unexpected and grim ingredient: urine. In the 12th century, a German monk developed a technique that involved mixing metal oxides and heating them to form glass. To achieve the brilliant colors for stained glass, urine was used as a binding agent in the painting process. When the glass was fired in a kiln, the urine helped the metals bond with the glass, creating the stunning hues seen in churches to this day. Despite the peculiar use of urine, stained glass windows have become symbols of craftsmanship and devotion. Their history, however, provides a glimpse into the complex and sometimes uncomfortable methods that shaped artistic traditions. Number 9. The story of the American flag. The American flag, a symbol of unity and freedom, has a surprising origin story tied to a teenager's determination. In 1958, 17-year-old Robert Heft designed a new flag with 50 stars, anticipating the admission of Alaska and Hawaii to the Union. His American history teacher, Stanley Pratt, gave him a low grade for the project, deeming it unnecessary with only 48 states at the time. However, Heft was undeterred and submitted his design to President Dwight Eisenhower's administration. Against all odds, his flag design was selected from over 1,500 submissions and was adopted on July 4, 1960, marking the 50th anniversary of Independence Day. Upon returning to school, Heft's teacher honored their agreement, raising his grade. The flag Heft created has since become one of the most recognized symbols of America, embodying both the nation's history and its evolving future, proving that even the smallest actions can leave a lasting impact on history. Number 8. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study, one of the most unethical medical experiments in American history, spanned from 1932 to 1972 and involved more than 600 African American men, most of whom were impoverished sharecroppers. The study, run by the U.S. Public Health Service, aimed to observe the progression of untreated syphilis. The men were misled into thinking they were receiving treatment for bad blood, but in reality, they were denied any form of medical care, even after penicillin became the recognized treatment for syphilis in the 1940s. As a result, many of the men died from the disease, and others passed it on to their wives and children. The study continued for 40 years, only coming to light after a public outcry in 1972. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study not only left a devastating impact on its participants, but also led to widespread mistrust in the medical community and the eventual establishment of new ethical standards for medical research. Number 7. Shadows of the Dead. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. After the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, one of the most haunting legacies of the explosions was the shadows of the dead. These imprints were left behind on surfaces as intense heat and light from the bombs seared the shapes of people and objects into the ground. Known as black shadows, they have eerily preserved outlines of children on bicycles, couples standing in front of buildings, and other moments frozen in time as the explosion vaporized everything around them. The phenomenon occurred because the heat and radiation blocked the light from reaching certain areas, creating a stark contrast between the scorched earth and the unscathed imprints. While the victims of the bombing suffered severe burns and many later died from radiation sickness, the shadows of the dead remains an indelible reminder of the devastating power of nuclear warfare, symbolizing the human toll of World War II. Number 6. Thomas Edison's talking doll. Thomas Edison, renowned for his groundbreaking inventions like the phonograph, also attempted a venture that became one of his rare failures: the talking doll. In 1887, Edison introduced a 22-inch doll equipped with a miniature phonograph that could recite nursery rhymes or sing songs. Unfortunately, the dolls were a complete disaster. The dolls' voices were creepy, and the mechanism was cumbersome, making it difficult for children to operate. Even worse, the dolls' wax records quickly deteriorated, causing the dolls to malfunction. The talking doll lasted only 6 weeks on the market before being discontinued. Despite this failure, Edison's determination and innovative spirit left a lasting mark on the development of sound technology. Number 5. The Siege of Leningrad. The Siege of Leningrad, which lasted from September 1941 to January 1944, is considered one of the longest and deadliest blockades in history. The German and Finnish armies surrounded the Soviet city of Leningrad, modern-day St. Petersburg, cutting off all supply routes, leaving residents without food, water, or fuel. The siege resulted in the death of over 1 million civilians due to starvation, cold, and the violence of war. The most chilling aspect of the siege was the rampant cannibalism that occurred as the population was driven to extreme measures to survive. Despite the brutal conditions, Leningrad's residents held out, relying on the bravery of the Soviet forces and limited aid via the Road of Life across Lake Ladoga. The siege remains a stark reminder of human endurance amidst unimaginable hardship, and the toll it took on the city's population is a grim chapter in World War II history. Number 4. Mozart's lecherous songs. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, hailed as one of the greatest composers of all time, led a life filled with music, genius, and scandal. While he composed some of the most revered classical pieces, he also wrote music that featured crude humor and explicit language, which was highly uncharacteristic of classical composers. One notorious example is his Canon in B-flat major, which contains suggestive lyrics that were deemed inappropriate for public performance at the time. Another piece, titled Lick Me in the Arse, was intended as a private joke with friends. These compositions reveal a mischievous side of Mozart, defying the image of him as a refined and serious musician. Mozart's music continues to captivate audiences worldwide, but these lesser-known works provide a glimpse into the rebellious and sometimes vulgar character behind the genius. Number 3. The Opium Wars in China. The Opium Wars, fought between China and Western powers, mainly Great Britain, in the mid-19th century, marked a pivotal moment in China's history. The wars were sparked by China's attempts to curb the opium trade, which was being forced upon them by British merchants seeking to balance their trade deficit. The First Opium War, 1839 to 1842, ended in a humiliating defeat for China, forcing them to sign the Treaty of Nanjing, which ceded Hong Kong to Britain and opened up several Chinese ports to foreign trade. The Second Opium War, 1856 to 1860, further weakened China, resulting in even more territorial concessions. These wars led to China's Century of Humiliation, where it became increasingly vulnerable to foreign powers. The Opium Wars left a legacy of resentment and played a crucial role in shaping China's modern political and social movements, fueling nationalistic sentiments that eventually led to the fall of the Qing dynasty and the rise of the Republic of China. Number 2. The Great Emu War of Australia. The Great Emu War of 1932 in Australia is one of the most bizarre and laughable military conflicts in history. After World War I, Australian farmers in Western Australia faced an agricultural crisis, exacerbated by emus, large flightless birds that were destroying crops. In an attempt to resolve the issue, the Australian government sent in soldiers with machine guns to eliminate the emu population. However, the emus proved surprisingly resilient, evading the soldiers with their speed and agility. Despite efforts over several months, the military's attempts were futile, leading to widespread ridicule. The government eventually abandoned the military operation and resorted to offering bounties for emu kills. While the Great Emu War became an embarrassing chapter in Australian history, it also highlights the unpredictable complexities that can arise in managing wildlife and agriculture. Number 1. Hitler and Disney. Adolf Hitler, infamous for his role in leading Nazi Germany and orchestrating the Holocaust, had an unexpected and unsettling admiration for Disney films. Despite his extreme anti-American stance and his banning of foreign films, Hitler secretly adored Disney's animated works. In particular, he considered Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs the greatest animated film ever made, and even had a private screening of it at his personal cinema in 1938 when Roy Disney visited Germany. Fascinatingly, Hitler also sketched characters from Disney films, such as Pinocchio, as a young man. This curious contradiction, his love for innocent animated films versus the brutal reality of his regime, sheds a strange light on the complexity of his personal life. Though it is a bizarre fact, this detail is a chilling reminder that even the most monstrous figures can have peculiar, seemingly innocent sides. If you find this video intriguing, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.